So as it always tends to, deadline day brought plenty of twists and turns, but how do I rate each Championship club's transfer business from this summer? Let's find out. Guys, welcome back to another video on the channel. Love to get your guys' input in this one in the comments down below. We're going to be going through each Championship club and the business that they've done this summer, and I'm just going to give my sort of verdict and rating for how I think they've all done individually. As always, if you do go to enjoy, make sure to leave a like. If we could hit 450 likes on today's video, that would be massively appreciated. But without any further ado, let's jump into this one. And so we'll start out with Barnsley, where I think that overall it's been pretty steady recruitment, I think is the word that I probably used to describe this time. Obviously the big departure was always going to be Alex Mowatt. You know, they got that situation, you know, handled fairly swiftly with him not signing that contract extension, and I do like a couple of the players that they have invested in. Obviously they got Claudio Gomez coming in on loan on deadline day from Manchester City. Excited to see how he gets on there. Josh Benson was another player who came into that midfield, and they also got a couple of players from Belgium, and then they sort of took that gamble on Devante Cole. Overall rating out of 10 for Barnsley's business, I'd probably go around like a 6, sort of in the middle of the road. They've not really rocked the boat with any sort of massive signings here, but they brought a couple in who in years to come will probably be those next saleable assets, and they've not lost anyone else big, like say a Woodrow or a Styles or anything like that. So yeah, I go middle of the road for Barnsley, about a 6 out of 10. Next up then to Birmingham. Now it's been a general trend in the Championship over this summer to get deals done on either free transfers or loan deals, and this is a particular market which I think Birmingham have done some excellent business in this window. Obviously earlier on we had deals such as Jordan Graham coming in, Ryan Woods and Chuck Shaniki, and they've also used the loan market really well. Heath Chong especially, who we picked out on the channel quite a few times so far. Really excited for his season to come. And then later on they obviously got the big one done in Troy Deeney arriving. Now I am interested to see what Deeney's role is going to be at Birmingham this season. Obviously he's in a fairly similar mould to someone like a Djukovic maybe, so I'm interested to see what the balance Bowyer is sort of angling for at Birmingham there. But I think they've invested into the positions that they probably were in need of, and overall for Birmingham I think it's been a really good window given the circumstances. Definitely a better window than they've had in years gone by, and overall I give that like an 8 out of 10 or something like that. I really think they've done the business this time. Next then to Blackburn Rovers. Now what Blackburn's summer was always going to hinge on was the Adam Armstrong situation. He only had 12 months left in his contract, so they need to make some sort of call on him, whether to sell him and get that money or keep him for the season and then risk losing him on a free next summer. Now that transfer saga did rumble on for quite some time, but once that deal was done we thought that okay, this is when Blackburn really sort of step up into gear and get some deals done. And while they have invested into the loan market, they've not really made all too many moves in terms of sort of reinvesting those funds that they got from Armstrong. I think that the hope was that the replacements were already sort of in the squad. You know, they're sort of relying on Brereton and Gallagher sort of sharing the goals this season that Adam Armstrong put up last season. I do like the look of some of the loanees that they've got in, and obviously Blackburn have an excellent track record with developing these sort of players, but I can't help but feel like with the amount of players that they let go of during the summer, they lost that firepower in Armstrong. I don't think it's particularly been the best window here for Blackburn, and you know, it's a lot of unproven players coming in. So overall out of 10, I'd probably give like a 4. I feel like they could have done a little bit more. Next then we go to Blackpool, who have had an incredibly hectic transfer window. I think in the end it's about 13 additions coming into this squad. Now whether or not these players will be enough to keep Blackpool up this season is obviously yet to be seen, but if we're going off some of the deals that they've done so far, I mean I do like a look of a few of them. Obviously on deadline day towards the end they got a few deals done for a pair of right backs, which they were definitely in need of. Dujon Sterling, who was seen in the Championship before, and Tyrus John Jules, who's returning there after a good loan spell with Blackpool last season. The profile of player is quite easy to see here. You know, they've gone for sort of young players who have got a bit of a point to prove, whether they've been let go by Premier League academies or they picked a couple of ones up from the lower leagues as well. Josh Bowler's been one who's caught my eye so far this season. I'm interested to see how he gets on over the year, and in terms of a rating out of 10, I'd probably give it like a 6. I think that, you know, it's tough to say at the moment because obviously if these players end up keeping Blackpool up, then it's been a great window for them. If not, then perhaps they'll have been looking for a little bit more quality in some areas. But of face value right now, I think they've done some alright business. They've certainly picked some decent players up on free transfers. So yeah, I give it a solid 6 out of 10. Next up then we go to Bournemouth, who certainly pulled a few deals out of the hat on deadline day, getting deals done for both Jamal Lowe and Ryan Christie, and for me that really levels up their transfer window and their business here, because I mean, up until this point in the season there was a feeling of they needed just something a little bit extra in the final third. Obviously Danjuma was the major sale from this summer, and they did manage to keep hold of Philip Billing though, which is some good business. I think that they're looking quite well stocked now in midfield, especially with the addition of Ryan Christie. Marcondes has already come in and had an impact. I like the addition of Jamal Lowe. Cahill comes in to add a bit more experience into that back line as well. I think they've had a pretty good window here, all things considered. That Christie deal especially, I think, could turn out to be an absolute bargain. So out of 10, I'd give that a solid like 8, 8.5 maybe. After that we then go to Bristol City. Now the best deal that they picked up this summer is undoubtedly for Rob Atkinson. You know, he follows along on that sort of similar path of Bristol City looking for saleable assets and people to develop. I think they got a brilliant deal done there for Atkinson. Judge Tanner as well also comes in for sort of a similar profile, 21 years old, from Carlisle. But apart from that, Bristol City didn't really do as much business as I was originally expecting them to. With the amount of players that they let go of during the summer and the way they struggled for goals last season, they haven't really addressed that area of their squad, which does surprise me a little bit. I think they're looking lighter up front now. Obviously they no longer have Jeju and a couple of the midfielders who have departed, so there is that sort of reliance on Chris Martin now to stay fit for this season and Naki Wells to sort of rediscover some sort of form. They did bring in the likes of Matty James and Andy King, who are decent sort of options for the time being, although they are both over 30 now. Overall for Bristol City, I'd probably go like a 4 out of 10. I really like the deal for Atkinson, but apart from that, I feel like they could have done a lot more. Next then we go to Cardiff City, where I think there was the sort of attempt to sort of try to slash the wage bill a little bit going into this season. I think that if we compare Cardiff's squad right now compared to last season, with the loan players that have gone and some of the other departures that have happened since, I do think they are looking weaker, which may be a little bit of cause for concern. Obviously the big news on deadline day was the fact that Kiefer Moore is still a Cardiff player, which is absolutely massive news. You know, those rumours linking him to Wolves were starting to heat up at one point. Giles is also potentially the loan signing of the window. He's been absolutely excellent so far, but should something happen to him, where else is the creativity going to come from in this Cardiff squad? That could be a little bit of an issue. Obviously they let go of Murphy in the end to Michael Preston, which we'll speak about later, which I was a little bit surprised by. But overall for Cardiff, it's not been an awful window. Obviously they've added a little bit more depth in some positions. You know, James Collins came in fairly early on and I said I liked that deal at the time, but overall I'll probably go middle of the road, like a 5 out of 10 for Cardiff here. Next up we then go to Coventry, who I'd say have had a solid transfer window. If there was the sort of desire to sort of like seriously push on this season, then obviously they could have perhaps done a little bit more. But in terms of slowly building upon their finish from last season, I don't think the business that they've done this time around has been all too bad. I think that Gyökeres and Ben Sheaf, who were on loan there last season, have sort of justified their transfers so far with the performances they put in this season up until this point. A couple of other transfers that I've liked. Simon Moore's been a really solid addition in net so far this season, and I'd also say the deals that they've done in terms of keeping hold of some of their key players. You know, the fact that Gustavo Hamer and Callum O'Hare are both still Coventry players is a massive benefit for them heading into this season. Now they also got loan deals done for the likes of Jake Clark-Salter and Ian Matston. Obviously Todd Kane came in on deadline day and they got that deal done for Waghorn earlier on. I think it's been a solid window of business for Coventry, who I'd give a good 7 out of 10 for this time. After that we then head to Derby County. Now context is obviously important to consider when we're discussing Derby here, because should any other team have had the window that Derby have just had, you know, we'd probably be slating them. You know, if the team's bringing in like Jagielka, Richard Stearman and Ryan Allsop, on the face surface of stuff, it doesn't look great. However, given how dire their situation was coming into this season, things could have been a whole lot worse for Derby this season, and to be honest, I think they've probably done the best that they could have done with the resources and the restrictions that have been imposed on the club during this summer. I know he splits people's opinions of him, but Ravel Morrison's probably like the most exciting deal that's come in, and apart from that they've added sort of a wealth of experience to the span of that squad. They are still looking very thin in some areas. but as a counterbalance to that, they've not lost some of the youngsters that some of us were perhaps expecting them to, which is a benefit. So given the context of everything, I don't think it's been a disaster of a window for Derby here, who I'd give like a 6 out of 10 for this window, all things considered. Next up, let's go to Fulham, and I mean, it's a 10 out of 10 window for the Championship at the end of the day, isn't it? They have brought in serious quality, and they have spent the money for that. But they've done some fantastic deals along the way. You know, they spent over 22 million this summer, which is absolutely crazy given what everyone else has spent this season. But I mean, with that money gets you serious quality in the Championship. Harry Wilson was the big deal, which was done earlier on in the window. We've already seen his quality in the Championship, and they didn't stop bringing in quality deals up until deadline day. They got that Watford duo in Domingos Quina and Nathaniel Chalobah. Chalobah especially, I really started to like the look of towards the end of last season with Watford. Obviously got a promotion under his belt with Watford last season as well. They were linked with that Matt Grimes move throughout the summer, but that didn't materialise in the end. But I mean, Nathaniel Chalobah is not exactly bad to have as a backup option, is he? Rodrigo Munoz also arrived at Fulham. He was linked to both Fulham and Middlesbrough throughout the summer, but he chose Craven Cottage in the end. Listen, it's a great window. They've spent the money. It's a 9 or a 10 out of 10, isn't it? Next then for Huddersfield Town, who I'm a little bit mixed on really, because they've definitely added depth into areas of their squad which wasn't there last season, and that really hindered them at times last season. You know, they went on a couple of really bad runs of form because of the injuries that they accumulated in positions, and I think they will be a little bit better stocked in those areas this season, which is of course a benefit. However, some of the deals that they have done, I can't help but feel like are the sort of deals that my club Preston have been doing over the last few transfer windows, and we've sort of been slating our club for doing that. You know, bringing in players who are sort of like going on 30 now, who haven't played at this level before, who aren't going to have much resale value after a couple of seasons. And it's a bit all over the place, the recruitment from Huddersfield this season, because I think there will be some hits from the players they brought in. I think there'll be quite a few misses as well, so the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle of that really. So out of 10, I'd probably go middle of the road, like a 6 really. Obviously Huddersfield have been another club who've sort of been reliant on bringing in players on frees and loans as well. After that we go for Hull City, another team where context is important to consider, and another one who I'd probably say has had like a middle of the road sort of transfer window. They've not, you know, completely rocked the boat because of their financial situation being under that embargo. They've been limited with the players that they brought in, but considering those restrictions, they've actually done some decent deals here. I like the profile of a few players that they brought in. Got a few decent ones in on loan and with free transfers as well. Obviously Tom Huddleston came in to add a bit more experience into that spine of that team as well. Had a really good debut the other week, which we picked up on the channel. Another striker probably would have been ideal, but overall I'd give it a 6 out of 10. There was no massive sales for Hull either, which I think is a benefit. After that we then go to Luton Town, who got a lot of their business done earlier on in the transfer window, and I certainly think that they benefited from that. The sort of original team that Luton were promoted up to the Championship with, that cycle has sort of ended, and this summer was a bit of a refresh of the squad. I think they got some really good deals over the line actually. I like the profile of the players that they brought in, a lot of sort of 22s, 23s who after a couple of years of development will skyrocket in value if they do develop them at their current rate. They also brought in a few experienced heads on the flip side of that with the likes of Cameron Jerome and Henry Lansbury as well. But yeah, I can't lie, I like this recruitment from Luton here. You know, Alan Campbell, Fred Onyedinma, Admiral Musgrave coming in, Carlos Mendes. But overall, I'm going to give them an 8.5 out of 10. I think it's a really good window for them. After that we then go to Middlesbrough, who have been linked to about 700 players throughout this summer transfer window. I'm quite glad that this window's over, because every single day Middlesbrough would just be linked to about 50 different players, wouldn't they? But I mean, they got plenty of deals over the line in the end, to be fair to them, and it has been quite a hectic transfer window with quite a bit of money spent in the end. Obviously a lot of that went on Martin Pereiro, but yeah, I'm very interested to see how all these players now bed into this Borough squad. I was a little bit surprised that they let Morsey go on deadline day. They maybe are looking a little bit light in a couple of areas, you know, perhaps midfield and the left back, but they have brought in quality to this squad. Obviously they got that deal done for Andras Barra over the line in the end. He comes in with Uche Ekpizu to add to their forward options. Onel Hernandez was one that came out of nowhere, but I quite like the look of really on the loan deal. Overall I give it an 8 out of 10. I think it's been a good window for Borough, and yeah, all he needs now surely to have a real charge with them for the top 6. Next for them for Millwall, who I'd say overall have had a fairly solid transfer window. Could they have done a little bit more business? Of course they could have, but I think that probably applies to most Championship clubs. They They were seemingly after sort of like a number 10 or a creative midfielder, and in the end nothing really materialised with that. Whether that means that Jed Wallace will perhaps drop a little bit deeper to be the guy sort of creating chances, I don't know this season, maybe with like a Phobe and Ojo playing ahead of him. Obviously they did get that deal done in the end for Shea Ojo, who I like the look of last season at Cardiff. He had a couple of really good games against Preston, if I remember correctly. They also got deals done for Daniel Ballard, who's coming on loan and improved them at the back, George Saville in midfield, who's re-signed there, and they also got Scott Malone back and George Long as well, with no massive departures either to consider. So out of 10, I give it a 7 for Millwall. I would have bumped it up a number or two had they got in that creative midfielder. Next then we go to Nottingham Forest. In the end they didn't get that deal done and over the line for Josh Maja, so they missed out on the striker at the end of the day, which is disappointing considering that was one of the areas that they were targeting coming into this window. However, I still like a few of the deals that they've got over the line. All the players that they brought in on permanent transfers are either 26 years old or younger, which I think is a positive given Forest recruitment over previous years. They've been quite guilty with bringing in players of like 30, 31, and after a year or two they just end up being deadwood in that squad. They've also shifted on a bit of deadwood, which is also a positive to take from this window. But the real positive is the players that they brought in on loan. I think that James Garner and Philip Zinkenagel, most teams in the Championship would take those two, if I'm being honest with you. I think they got real quality in those players, and I don't think that Chris Hughton's going to have many more excuses after this international break not to be getting a tune out of these players now, because there is quality in this squad, albeit they may be a little bit short in some areas. But in terms of this transfer window, I don't think it's been that bad for Forest. I give it like a 7 out of 10 maybe. I think it's been alright. After that we then go for Peterborough United, who I would say have probably had the best transfer window out of each of the 3 newly promoted clubs. Would you guys agree with that? Let me know down below. I think that the best bit of business that Peterborough have probably done is keeping hold of their saleable assets for another year in the Championship. You know, Sariki Dembele and Johnson Clark-Harris, if either of them go on to smash it this year, then their value increases by like 3 times, doesn't it? Both of them look likely to leave at the start of the window as well, so the fact that they kept hold of them I think is a massive testament to them. I also really like the recruitment. They brought in more players of a sort of similar ilk who are going to, they're going to look to develop and they're going to look to flip for a profit in future years. Josh Knight looks like a really good deal on paper. George Grant was quite an exciting one when that deal was done at the time as well. Obviously Jack Marriott was one of the few players who came in who actually had Championship experience previously, but for the window overall I think they've done some decent deals here. I give it a 7.5 out of 10. Whether this will be enough to sort of keep them up in the league this season, that's another question to be answered, but in isolation with this window I think they've done alright here. Next up then for my club, Preston North End, who I sort of feel like salvaged things on transfer deadline day. Had it not been for the couple of deals that we got over the line later on, then I would have been giving North End a really low number here, because we were promised a bit of a rebuild this summer and it didn't quite happen up until the final hour. Now the deals we did get done on deadline day, Josh Murphy comes in on loan. I quite like that addition. I think that we were lacking someone who's good in 1v1 situations. I think that Murphy adds that, and we also got a deal done for St Johnstone's Ali McCann, one of the hottest prospects in Scotland at the moment. Now on paper we already looked quite heavily stocked in midfield. Obviously we just sent Tom Bayliss out on loan and we've already got like 5 or 6 players sort of vying for those midfield 3 positions, but I do think that McCann gives us something that we've not had since we sort of let go of Ben Pearson, someone who will put his foot on the ball, get a tackle in midfield. Last season in the Scottish League he completed more successful tackles than any other player with 91, and for us to have got that deal done for just over £1 million I think looks like really good business on the surface of stuff, and this is the sort of recruitment that North End fans have been crying out for. 21 years old, loads of resale value if we can continue to develop him, so yeah, good deal done there. A couple of the other deals I'm not particularly sure on at the moment. You know, the likes of Liam Lindsay, Izzy Brown, who's going to miss the whole season now. Jamie Thomas was a bit of a punt from non-league who we've not seen yet. But we also got a couple of decent loan-ins as well. But what's really going to hold us back here is the fact that we didn't get that striker over the line in the end, and we didn't manage to shift really any of the deadwood, and so we are looking a little bit bloated at the moment. But overall, things considered, I'd give us a 6 out of 10 for this window. We sort of saved it towards the end. Next we then go to QPR, who have absolutely smashed their transfer window this time around, and when we thought they might be done with their business, they go ahead and pull another rabbit out of the hat and get that deal done for Andre Gray. It's a nice mix of players that they brought in here at sort of different ages. They've done some work with bringing in players on loan, a couple of free transfers, and they've spent a few fees as well, but I think in the end they've spent just over £2 million or so, and considering all the players that they brought in and all the quality that's been added to the starting 11, this has been a brilliant window for QPR here, all things considered. Obviously, they got those deals done early on in the window for the players they had on loan last season. Sam Field and Jimmy Dunn are a couple of the players who come in at sort of like decent ages, both at 23, who they'll look to develop over the years. Same goes with Andre Dizelle as well, and then someone like a Johansson comes in to just instantly add that quality to the midfield. And then they got that deal done for Andre Gray. What I found funny about that was so many other Championship clubs were scrambling around on deadline day looking for a striker. Quite a few of them didn't get a deal done and over the line in the end, and QPR already had two quality options up front in Charlie Austin and Lyndon Dykes, and then they went ahead and added the third option to that with Andre Gray. I know he didn't have his finest season with Watford last time around, but that's sort of like your third choice maybe. QPR are looking very strong here, so overall I'd be tempted to give them another 10. I think it's been a great window. Next then we go to Reading, where context is also once again worth considering here. You know, they were obviously another club who was under an embargo this summer. Now, I mean, they've really strengthened midfield where they were already looking quite strong, which is interesting, and yet they've not brought in a striker, which seemed to be the position that most people at the club were angling for earlier on in the window, which I find interesting. Obviously, they got deals done for Halilovic, Deli Bashiru and Danny Drinkwater, all come in as other options in midfield. Junior Hoyler, obviously, another one who you could add into that, who's going to play out wide. Scott Down came in as well, so a bit of experience there, and then Baba Rahman on loan at the back as well. Michael Elise being the major asset sold for Reading this summer, with them looking light in a few areas, particularly up top, you know, with Zhao out at the moment. Should anything happen to Puskas, where did he go from there? I'd probably give them like a 5, maybe a 6 out of 10. And after that we then go to Sheffield United, who I'm really mixed on what I make of this transfer window, to be honest with you, because I think that the 4 loan players that they brought in, I think are all absolutely quality. I think that most other Championship clubs would take those 4 players in Olsen, Morgan Gibbs White, Conor Hourihane and Ben Davis. Nothing wrong with absolutely any of them for me. I think they're all good additions. However, they've not really strengthened some of the positions which I expected them to. You know, Slav was coming in, and I thought that the first thing on the agenda would be to get a couple of wingers in. That's not happened this window, so he's obviously going to have to adapt to the squad here, or it's going to be a bit of a case of sort of square pegs round holes in the final third. You know, they've got a lot of bodies there in terms of strikers at the moment, but I'm not sure who quite fits the system. Ramsdale was obviously the major asset sold, but I think that they've done alright to get Olsen in as his replacement for the season. So, I'm really mixed on this one. I'd probably give it like a 6.5, maybe pushing towards a 7, because they have brought quality in, but I feel like they've fallen short in the positions that they should have strengthened. And after that we then go to Stoke City, who I think have had a very strong transfer window indeed. If we compare this window right here to their first window when they were relegated down to the Championship, it's night and day, and it's clear to see that finally they're heading in the right direction in terms of consistent recruitment. If we look at sort of like the average ages of the players that they brought in on permanent deals, they've reinvested that money that they got in for Collins quite sensibly, and they've sort of distributed that to strengthening the whole span of the squad. They've also managed to let go of some of the deadwood which was there from last season and previous seasons gone by. They've added some real quality into the midfield with the likes of Varancic and Sawyers, who's came in for the season. At the back they're looking stronger with Ostergaard and Wilmot. Sam Surridge came in as another option going forward. I think all things considered this is a really good window here for Stoke, who I give a 9 out of 10 for. Next up then for Swansea City, who I'm not sure here. I don't think they've had the greatest of windows. They might have salvaged it with a couple of the deals that they've got done and over the line later on, but I mean, if we compare this squad that they're working with now compared to what they had last season, it is considerably weaker. And Russell Martin does have a bit of a task on his hands now of sort of integrating this new philosophy into this group of players when they have lost obvious quality. You know, going back to the start of the summer, obviously when they lost IU due to his contract running out, on deadline day or close to it, they lost both Connor Roberts and Jamal Lowe. For both pretty low fees, to be honest with you, considering how well they did last season. Keeping hold of Matt Grimes, though, was absolutely massive, because at one point it did look more than likely that he would be off to Fulham. And they have also got some decent deals over the line, you know, the likes of Reece Williams, who's coming on loan, Ethan Laird as well. There were quite a few clubs who were chasing Michael Obafemi from Southampton, and Joel Pro as well has already been in the goals for them, who looks quite dangerous. Oliver Natchin was a nice addition to that squad as well, although they did miss out on Fosu, which would have been quite a nice addition on deadline day. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt with this one and go with a 6 overall, but it could easily be a little bit lower than that if things don't click for them here. And then finally for West Brom, though, obviously we're all going to make the comparison between sort of like West Brom and Fulham and the sort of expenditure and the quality that's coming to both teams in this window, and maybe that's a little bit unfair, because I think that West Brom have picked up some decent deals here, and they've used the loan market fairly well. Also, Alex Mount on a free transfer is potentially the signing of the season, so for that signing alone, I think that we say that this has been a successful window here for West Brom. They've also added championship experience. You know, Jordan Hugill maybe wasn't the quality striker that a few Bogies fans were expecting, but he'll come in and do a job for you this season at least. Matt Clark I've always quite liked from his couple of loan spells at Derby, and Jason Malumbi's done it at this level before as well, and then they took a bit of a punt on Adam Reach really. It's not been the sort of extravaganza of a window that some people were potentially expecting, but solid business has been done here nonetheless. I give them a 7.5 out of 10. But guys, there we have it. Those are my ratings for each championship club and what I made of their transfer business. I want to get your guys' thoughts on all the deals that were done late on, and in general what you made of your club's business in the comments down below. As always, if you did go to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and do stay tuned for some regular championship content. Apart from that though guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.